You're listening to the Sonny Brown Breakdown. Now, it is time to break it down.
Welcome to episode number 31 of the Sonny Brown Breakdown. I'm your host, Sonny Brown, and in this episode I talk to Chris Paines. Now, Chris describes himself as a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt who's never done Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so he started training submission grappling, somewhat isolated from the larger BJJ scene in Staffordshire, England, where he eventually begins attending BJJ Globetrotters camps and meets Preet Mikkelsen. And it was at these camps where he was graded up and awarded his black belt by Preet. And this unconventional way in which he learned kind of forced him to emphasize understanding the concepts behind grappling, which he describes as a machine of physics and biology through which, using the right concepts, these techniques can emerge. And we discuss these conceptual ideas he has and kind of the concept behind concepts. We specifically go into the details of his universal theory of guard, which has him focusing on control points and applying other lessons from wrestling that have kind of allowed him to progress in his unique situation. And it's an interesting discussion. I'm particularly intrigued by the BJJ Globetrotters camps and how they kind of work. And I'm hoping to cover that a bit more in the future. They've got a great YouTube channel where they put out all the seminars that are taught there that you can go check out. And Chris, of course, has his ones up there as well. And one I'll reference early on is titled How to Defend Everything, or something along those lines, which really kind of focuses on the concept of, knee-elbow connection and the constant defense of inside space. And it was certainly, raised my eyebrows when I first watched it, but I think there's some valuable lessons to learn from it, and at the very least, it's very interesting. So one other thing to note in this episode is you'll hear a kind of drop in the audio quality the first couple of minutes on Chris's ends. That was just a connection issue and it fixes itself up pretty quickly. And if you do enjoy it, please send any feedback through. The website's sonnybrown.net. My email is sonnybrown@gmail.com, and I'm active on Instagram, which the address is Sonny Brown Breakdowns. And with that, let's go to the podcast. Chris, how are you today, mate?
I'm good, thanks, Sonny. How are you today?
Yeah, good, mate. Good. So, I got in touch with you. Actually, the first time I think I saw you was it was a YouTube video from a seminar you did at BJJ Globetrotters, which had had a nice clickbaity title of, I think it was something along the lines of "This is how to defend everything," or
that was one, yeah.
And the title certainly worked for me. I clicked on it and I thought, what is this guy going on about? How is what he's doing going to ever work? And then I guess luckily I played around with it and I thought, actually there's something to this. And then it turns out that was something that you had been working with Preet Mikkelsen on, and I ended up having a chat with him. And then, looking into your own stuff, I was very interested with the take that you had on teaching and learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and also with your involvement with the BJJ Globetrotters, as I think you may have been maybe one of the first, or you were ranked through them as well?
Both. So oddly enough, give a brief background to my BJJ.
Yes, please.
I've never actually done BJJ. So I'm a black belt who's never done it. So I actually came through via submission wrestling 11 years ago. And my coaches left after the first year, like various reasons due to work and injury, etc. So they said to me, like, can you look after the club till we come back? That was 10 years ago. So there was literally there was no, all the techniques we had were, there was no stand-up guards, there was no Delahiva, there was no single leg X. You literally had closed guard, half guard, and butterfly. And if you stood up, you both stood up and you wrestled again. And that's pretty much all we had. So it was neck cranks and heel hooks. And when I started to come in with stuff like lockdown, because I was watching some Submissions 101, reading some 10th Planet books, and that was about it. That put me pretty much front of the whole group quite fast. And because I had stuff that people hadn't seen before, they just said, can you look after it till we come back? I don't think they're coming back. I've been waiting for 10 years and they haven't come back yet. Even where I am, like we're quite kind of fortunate in that Braulio Estima, his gym is about 35 miles away from my gym. I don't know what that is in kilometers, like 50 kilometers. But traveling there, like it was, I could maybe go once every 3 to 6 months due to work. And like I used to go to London for the same thing, like maybe every 3 to 6 months, go for like a single session. But the only reason we bought gis is because it was cold. Like we were rolling around in hoodies and tracksuits, and one winter I think it hit -14 inside the gym Celsius. So the water in the toilet froze and various other cold things. So it was pretty horrendous. And so we were just a bunch of no-gi guys who did heel hooks and neck cranks wearing gis, and occasionally, like maybe every 6 months, 3 months, a year, or whatever, I'd go to a BJJ gym and learn like a sweep, and then we'd come back and just do that sweep relentlessly. And so it's kind of like, so my approach to jiu-jitsu was forced along the lines of figure out why certain things happen. So what is the common thread amongst sweeps? Why do chokes work? Why is there guard? And if I could apply like a concept to why that existed, and then next time I go to a gym and they teach like a sweep, if my concept is proved right, it's kind of like, right, I've got the right concept. If I just keep using the concept, eventually I'll invent the techniques that already exist. Because BJJ is not handed down by some deity. It's on a plinth or a tablet or something. It's physics, it's biology, and we apply ourselves to the machine and we get techniques out the other end. So if I understand the machine, I should theoretically get the same techniques out eventually. And so when I met Preet and his very conceptual style of looking at jiu-jitsu as well, as in he doesn't really teach, this is a das, this is a triangle. This is a meta understanding of what defense is. That just kind of like touched on everything I want to know about jiu-jitsu. And so I kind of then ran with his ideas. I kind of looked into, I was never like, this, if it was from a Gracie or from a Bravo or something like, that's it, that's gospel. It was only a case of, if it works, like one thing I get like my blue belts and purple belts to teach. And one thing I say to them is, I don't care if you think, if it's wrong, it's right for now. As in what you're doing works for you now. There's obviously better versions of what you're doing and better details, but what you're doing is right now. And that understanding, then, you'll always get better. And I see that as my way of looking at it as well. And how I look at pre stuff, as in what I know works for now. There is obviously something better. I'm not the be all and end all of this technique. There's always going to be better details from different coaches and different black belts. So I can't exactly have my blue belts and purple belts thinking that I am the end product when I'm still trying to figure it out. So if I just apply myself to the machine and understand the machine, and eventually I'll understand jiu-jitsu on that kind of level. Now it's the reason why I prefer that way is because jiu-jitsu is chaos. As in 95% of a roll, you have no idea what's happening. As in there's just mania happening around you, and hopefully something you kind of recognize happens and you can apply something you already know. But if you understand the machine at various points in that roll, even when there's chaos, you can apply the machine and get a technique to work in that scenario. And that's where the whole how to defend everything came from. As in, if I can understand the concept of why defense works across the board, it doesn't matter what's happening in the chaos, I can find my way out. And I think if I'd known that as a white belt, jiu-jitsu would have been so much easier. Instead of having to like rote learn techniques, like I have to know. I mean, I even remember like having a spreadsheet back 11 years ago listing off side control defenses and guards and attacks from guards. And I know amount of times even today, I see people say I need to go on YouTube and look up 3 more side control defenses. It's like, oh, good God, this will take forever to learn. Like, there's no way you can learn jiu-jitsu this way. There has to be something more simple.
Yep. So yeah, I agree with you there. And it's funny that like the idea of having that spreadsheet of just all the techniques, it kind of seems like a good idea, right? Like, hey, if I just get everything written down, I'll have a more complete understanding, but then it soon becomes unmanageable with how you're going to do things or how you're going to actually achieve that. So I just want to focus on just your background, just one little bit more. So you're actually from then a catch wrestling lineage. Would that be correct in saying? You said submission wrestling, but is that?
Yeah. I don't think it's easy to use the word catch in the UK if you don't actually belong to the snake pit and that kind of lineage. So calling it submission wrestling was just easier. Like if I understand it, my coaches were just basically guys who watched a bit of UFC and just wanted to hurt each other. And so there was no real solid technique behind what we did. It was literally, here's a double leg, here's a closed guard, and here's a triangle. Just keep doing that until you win. So I didn't see Ʇᴏᴏᴡᴜ or open guard or single leg X for maybe the first 4 years of doing jiu-jitsu or grappling, should I say?
Yep. Okay.
But I actually, prior to that, I came from a traditional jiu-jitsu background, like a Japanese jiu-jitsu, and I did I got my black belt in that, and so that's why I was used to the idea of a list of techniques, and so coming into it, that's why every time I'd learn something, I'd write it down and create my own list because it didn't exist. There wasn't like a belt system or syllabus, so I created my own. And then once they left, I realized that I had no other real recourse for finding new techniques easily. Figuring out the why seemed to make a lot more sense than just having this dead list of techniques that will never be finished.
Yeah, and then so for you putting out or figuring out, the why and the understanding or the machine, as you've put it, how did that process kind of take place as you're traveling with BJJ Globetrotters to go to their camps and coming back home and putting that together? Was there an aha moment, or was it a slow, gradual process?
I don't think it was an aha moment. I think it was very slow and gradual. I was actually so I met Christian Graugart, the creator of Globetrotters, just before he created Globetrotters. So he'd written the book, and this was the end of 2012, and I just bought it over that Christmas, and I read it very, very fast. Then he said he was doing a seminar in the UK in Manchester, or Bolton, should I say. I was still a white belt, obviously. So I went up and I wanted to go meet him after reading this book. We ended up catching a train together back to Manchester, and he mentioned this idea of how because I said we're an independent gym, we didn't really do BJJ or have any IBJJF connections, and he said he wanted to create this network of independent gyms that could just train together. So I gave him my email address, and then about a month later he emailed a bunch of us saying, look, this affiliation is going to happen, do you want to be part of it? And instantly I said yes. And he said, well, one caveat is anyone who wants to come and see you can obviously train for free. And a bunch of the first coaches all in this chain email said, heck, if someone wants to come and like meet me at my gym, they can stay for free. And that's where the whole mat surfing idea came from. And soon after that, since there was a bunch of us, he said, why don't we all get together in my gym in Copenhagen and just train? So the first Globetrotter camps were just in CSA in Copenhagen, and there was about 40 or 50 of us on the mats, and there was no merch table, there was just or anything like that, or coaches from around. It was just the coaches from the gym doing a small number of classes in a day, like maybe 5 or 6 classes. So to see it go from that in 2013 to the utter behemoth that it is today has been quite weird. But yeah, so the ability to go to the Globetrotter camps and see all these different ideas from these different coaches, because the amount of times you'd see a class and then another coach would do pretty much the exact same class but in a different way, kind of makes you think that there isn't a definitive technique. They're all playing around the same concept. So it just kind of galvanized my ideas of, this don't become beholden to a single way of doing a technique or a single technique in general or a list of techniques. Understand the machine and you'll be able to apply it to that situation and create variations on the fly.
Yeah, which sounds like a much more efficient way, if possible, to actually learn and teach things, right? But I guess the if possible part is the difficult thing, because it's not exactly laid out like that already. It's something that you've had to explore and develop, I guess. So what's that process been like?
I think one of the first ones that actually really pushed me in the direction of it was there's a brilliant DVD set by Kit Dale and Nick Gregoriadis probably about the end of 2013, end of 2014, and they talk about this conceptual jiu-jitsu as well in the height of Kit Dale's fame. And again, it was kind of like this. It kind of then pushed my ideas further. Like this is a real thing. And so they talked about. I remember one of the specific ones was like sweeps, about unbalancing, about taking off like legs off a table and creating force on the diagonal and stuff like this. And so just approaching concepts that way. But I think there was also one of the first instances, I guess, as well, was there was a Ryan Hall seminar I went to back in 2011. It was in the UK for the ADCCs. And he did a seminar. It was on his deep half system. But at one point, he just threw this casual comment out about all control in jiu-jitsu is based on being in between the other person's knees and elbows. And so if you want to stop them, just connect your knees to your elbows. Mm-hmm. And it was a throwaway comment. He didn't put much emphasis of the seminar onto this idea. But that was like mind-blowing of just putting these two things together. And I think it might have been mentioned in the Kit Dale, Nick Gregoriadis DVD as well. And so they're all touching on this same idea. And so just these number of coaches out there just saying like, there are concepts that cover everything. And then maybe look at like different sweeps and think, right, so going from what these two guys have said, removing a table leg and creating pressure off an angle and all these different ideas that they had. I was like, right, well, there obviously is an idea here. So if I look at the sweeps that I know, do these fit? Or if I apply the idea, does my sweep work better? And then it became, I go to a gym and I'd learn a sweep and I was like, right, does this fit the concept that I know? Yes, perfect. And then it became a case of I mid-roll, because I had like my first year of training was involved any drilling. After that, it became teaching and rolling. So I've probably drilled a total of probably about 20 hours in the past 10 years. It was all developed on the fly, as in I try technique and try and put the concept together as it happens. So I'd look at certain things that happen, like where their leg is, where my arm is, etc., and go, right, well, if I apply the concept, will this work right now? Yes or no? And it was just that constant testing. It was never like an hour of the session was drilling. It was, right, let's just roll and roll and roll. And as things happened, it kind of just proved that the concept worked, or I have to tweak various aspects of it.
Yeah, okay. So it's very interesting that, I guess you've been in a bit of an isolated situation, and that's allowed you to explore and experiment in a new direction than what is more common. And so if I got it right in thinking that you're building up these ideas of concepts that can apply to moves across jiu-jitsu or grappling, and then you would go to another place where they're teaching a concept and you go to another place where they're teaching a technique. And as they're teaching the technique, you're thinking, okay, I've got these concepts that I know. What can I apply? What concept can I apply that will be applicable to this technique? Is that kind of how you're doing it?
Yeah. So I'm seeing the end result of the answer and applying the equation to it. And then because obviously, these are black belts and much more knowledgeable than I was. And they're thinking, right, if my equation fits their answer, if they're about to do what I think they're about to do, then my equation's correct. If not, I may have to tweak my equation somehow. But most of the time it was working out in the right way. So it was kind of like, right, I can then go back, and instead of just having to drill that one technique or whatever, I'd have just a concept I could then run with, and then just carry on rolling as I was and just keep inventing techniques. And eventually I was creating jiu-jitsu that already existed. And it's quite interesting. Like I've got pretty much concepts everywhere. Like I've got an overarching theory of guard, and I was given a private probably about 6 months ago, and the guy messaged me and he says, I want to learn, I think it was like reverse octopus back control or guard or something insane. And I was like, right, okay, I've never even heard of this. So I had a quick Google of it on YouTube, and it was like, it pretty much was exactly what I expected, my guard theory to be. I think I actually already played it in certain places. And I was like, right, okay, so the theory is correct again. So I was like, well, you don't need to learn this. If I teach you the concept, you'll invent it yourself again, or variations of it. Interesting.
So you've got those, you say, and then concepts of concepts that you're refining, not the techniques, I guess, but you're spending time refining your concepts that can help generate those techniques from out of those concepts, which is an interesting way to look at it. Is that close to then
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah,
Yeah,
as
okay.
in, it's like the idea that if you give a million monkeys or whatever it is, a million typewriters, then eventually they'll create Shakespeare. As in, if I
Hmm.
give a million white belts, these a million concepts, eventually they'll invent jiu-jitsu. Like,
I like
well,
that.
it's because of being from the traditional jiu-jitsu background, which was quite judo-esque with throws and karate punches, etc. They did Ogoshi, they did Ippon Sinag and Koshiguruma, and then you look at cat wrestling, and they've got the mare, which is pretty much an Ippon Sinag, and there's only so many. I think again, it's something that Ryan Hall says. There's only so many ways of grabbing a human body.
Hmm.
You'll eventually develop all these same techniques.
I
They
like
all,
it.
like even though there was like hip tosses, etc. I did some Icelandic glima at one of the Globetrot camps a couple of years ago, and they had hip tosses, etc. And you think these are, you've got Japanese judo and Icelandic glima, thousands of miles and thousands of years of culture apart, developing the same techniques. And so to separate jiu-jitsu out and say, jiu-jitsu is a unique thing only to jiu-jitsu, it's not. It's defined by the rule set. We fight on the ground. If I just put two random people on the ground and left them there for a couple of years, eventually they'd develop jiu-jitsu, give them the concepts, so develop jiu-jitsu faster, even without teaching them a single technique, because there's only so many ways a human being can be manipulated. And it's physics and biology. It's science.
Very interesting. And then, so I guess, would you be able to give us then an idea of one of your concepts, maybe the theory of guard that you just mentioned that can be applied?
Yeah. So the way I look at guard is, if you were to picture like a law of grappling when it comes to control, like wrestlers have been doing it for forever. There's three categories of control. There's behind the head, underneath in the armpit, or behind the knee / in the hip. And that pretty much covers everything in wrestling. That's your double legs, your single legs, your throws, your snap downs, your head ties, everything. And all you're ever doing in wrestling is attacking those three categories of places with your weapons. So two hands, or two hands and a leg if you have good balance. But all you're ever doing is getting a combination of those things. And the more those places you control out of the five, so one head, two armpits, and two knees, the more control you have over the person, the more likely you are to get a takedown. That is no different to any guard. So taking out the gi for a moment, we'll get back to that. Half guard is no different to a single leg. Close guard is no different to having double unders. So instead of having two weapons like you are in standing with your two hands, on the ground you have four weapons. You have two arms and two legs. It's what makes guard so interesting in my eyes, because I think again it was a Ryan Hall interview when he says why does Roger Gracie do so well? He says, if you are better than the other person, play guard, because if someone's upright, they've got balance, they've got gravity, they've got mass, they've got all this mobility on their side. If you're on your back, you literally have none of those things available to you. So you have to try and even the fight with improving your number of weapons from 2 to 4. And that's why you don't just fight from side control. That's why you bring your legs into the fight. And that's assuming then you are better than the other person. You can override these natural attributes. If you can't, play on top and don't play guard ever. So yeah, going back to this idea, if you're playing guard, you want to try and maximize control. And it's no different to wrestling, as in, I want to increase my numbers as much as I can with these 4 weapons. So you think that when you're playing close guard, you are just getting double unders. And then now, because you have your arms free, you can now control the back of the head. Now you have 3 points of control. And guard is usually then won and lost with how many of those control points you have. So if you have 5, if you have both their knees, both their armpits and their head wrapped up, they're going nowhere. If you have 3, so maybe close guard with control of the back of the head, again, it's pretty hard for them to go anywhere. 2, yeah, it's now getting more likely they are to escape. If you have 1, life is now hard. And so all I ever look at when I'm playing in guard then is, if I'm in guard, I'm on the bottom, I want to increase my numbers as much as I can to 5. If I'm on top of guard, I want to decrease those numbers down to 1 or 0. And that's my guard pass. And so I just look at those 5 points. And that's, again, going back to this idea of wrestling. If you don't want to get single-legged, don't let anyone control the back of your knee. If you don't want, the first thing you learn in wrestling is to pummel. Why? Because you don't want anyone in your armpits. yeah, for some strange reason in jiu-jitsu, because you have this predicament solution style of learning, as in he does X, I do Y, we kind of let people have these control points. We let people have close guard. At no point in wrestling would you let someone have double underhooks. You'd die. But you wouldn't let someone sit with a single leg on you. You'd die. Yet we let people play close guard and half guard against us all day long, and we don't deal with those issues. Yeah, if you were to deal with them like a wrestler does, pummel out, strip those controls from the back of the knee, the armpits, etc., then we're passing. So why don't we just learn that instead of just learning a whole raft of guards and a whole raft of escapes? Have I made sense, or have I just lost it there?
No, that's made a lot of sense. I was just thinking my wrestling coach he certainly doesn't like seeing the way that jiu-jitsu players will just accept a half guard on bottom.
Exactly. It's like watching a wrestler just accept a single leg and go, right, cool, I'm going to fight from here. It's like, that is utterly bizarre to me. And there's a very good friend of mine. His name's Darius from Germany. He's done all manner of different grappling styles, but he's a very good judo guy. And one thing he mentioned to me was that when they grab the gi in judo, it's actually where the seam is in line with the armpit, which is one thing I didn't realize. And that's the tightest part of the gi. So if you go 2 inches above and you're going more towards the neck, the gi gets quite loose. If you go 2 or 3 inches down towards the bottom of the lapel, again, it gets quite loose. But right in line with the armpit, it's super tight. It goes around the back. I thought it controls the armpit. So even with the gi on, they're still doing it. And so if you look at worm guard, if you look at Ʇᴏᴏᴡᴜ, if you look at single leg X, they're all applying this idea, even with or without the gi. Now, as mad as Keenan's system is, it works because, again, you're controlling the armpit with the gi wrapped around your foot and the back of their knee. If you want to start stripping worm guard apart, you pummel the leg out of the armpit and pressure out of the Ʇᴏᴏᴜᴜ hook and put it into the back of their knee instead. You don't need a list of techniques to escape all these different guards. You just think, right, are they behind your knee? You think that's what's the first escape you learn as a white belt from close guard? Drive your knees into their drive your elbows into their thighs. Why? Because it gets them out of your armpits.
Yeah. Okay.
The easiest escape from half guard is just push on their hip and bring your knee up, and so they're only holding onto your ankle. The first escape from Ʇᴏᴜᴜ is to move your knee out and push into the back of their knee, because it takes the control from the back of your knee. From single leg X, it's to strip their feet from your hips, and so they've no longer got their hips controlling the back of your knee. It's all there. Yeah. It's wrestling 101.
Yeah, that's a couple of things have clicked for me there. I mean, especially as you mentioned, grabbing the gi as a means to control the armpit. That's certainly, new way of looking at it for me. And so it really is, you're just like knee pit control, armpit control, behind the back of the head. Those are the 5 points. If we let people become aware of that, then no matter what situation they get put into, they can be thinking, one, what of those 5 points do I have controlled that I can clear out? Or two, what points of my opponents of those can I control? And
exactly. Like you think of your half guard, it gets better the more, deep half is more of a control than regular half, because instead of just controlling one knee, you're controlling two. Or if you go up to dog fight, etc., you're now controlling the armpit. Or if you get a wizard, etc., it's all wrestling. If you control the back of the head, etc., you've now got 3 or 4 points of control. If you can wrap the gi up around the back and get the far armpit, you've now got 5 points of control. And so I don't see any difference between. It's like guard is just like fighting a 4-armed alien wrestler, and how you try and cope with that scenario.
And so then that is, that's then your overarching theory of guard at a wider view. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it's like I said, I don't consider anything I have to be an end point. I have what I have that is right for now. So I always look for things that either improve my ideas or prove my ideas are working. So looking at it in a more scientific way. But so far, looking at all the, like I said, when I got this reverse Della octopus or whatever it was he wanted me to go through, I don't care. It was that idea. I think he got a closed guard and he pulled around the back of the shoulder and the back of the head, then got an underhook on the leg. And I was like, well, yeah, this is exactly what I've been saying. So it's that you've now got 4 points of control over him. Yeah, you could have invented this yourself.
It's a very interesting way to look at it, that, yeah, you could then, using those principles, be able to come up with things that have already been invented by other people. But I mean, I guess that is a common refrain in all of grappling, that nothing's really invented. It's just rediscovered or popularized by certain people.
Exactly. Like I said, like going back to the whole gleamer and judo idea, there's only so many ways of controlling a human being. And so if you grapple for long enough, you'll invent the same things that have existed forever. Like, you know, people seem shocked when they see 60-year-old videos of judo where they're playing ďāļhīva. It's like, no, it's just, again, it's the laws of grappling. You are controlling the back of the knee. Of course it's going to work.
And so then someone is coming into your gym that you're running a class.
Yeah.
How do you then take that, you know, that overarching theory of guard that you've got there and, you know, apply that into a technique, or just into a usable manner for someone? Is there a way that you go around that? The way
I did jiu-jitsu the normal way of like saying, like, you know, do a triangle from closed guard. But again, after meeting Preet, he said it makes more sense to do stuff backwards. And I could see that when I started to look at how I looked at jiu-jitsu anyway. So we did have a beginner course where it was 8 weeks long, and every week they learn one of these different concepts. So they'd learn the behind the knee idea, they'd learn the don't let anyone in between your knee and your armpit idea. Again, it was, you know, slight segue, side idea. If you look at any video of when Preet does Running Man, it's no different to what, again, a very good friend of mine, Charles Harriott, showed me his ideas on shrimping. And a shrimp is just a close side version of Running Man. As in one direction you shrimp, and the other direction you Running Man, but they're both the exact same idea. I'm trying to get my knees and my elbows to touch. And so at that point, it made me realize that everyone, if they're shrimping both ways up and down the mats, in theory, they're doing shrimp and Running Man, which is great. And so again, that kind of proved the idea that both these things are to get someone out of your knees and armpits by connecting those to your knees and your elbows back together again. I thought, well, why do I have to then like specifically only teach the shrimp? Why can't I just say connect these two things back together again? And so, yeah, we had this idea of like an 8-week course. We then learn that idea, like, you know, don't let anyone between your knees and your armpits, day 1. Day 2, this is guard theory. And by the end of the guard theory session, I was watching people invent ďāļhīva, like the beginnings of it. They'll grab him behind the ankle and wrapping their foot behind the other person's knee. I was like, you guys have never seen ďāļhīva, but you have just invented it. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And so if someone comes into the class, every concept kind of gets drilled relentlessly every single day. Well, say if we were doing a triangle or a kimura or something, we'd start from the end. So we'd do the triangle and learn all the finishing aspects of it, and then go backwards. And so go from just having control behind the head with your legs, but they're kind of postured or something, and then go from just the arm is trapped. But every kind of like step back you do, the person's moving around a bit more, and you're just trying to find that end product. And so instead of learning 5 different setups for a triangle, you learn the end product of what you want. I want the arm trapped. I'm doing it from these control points of behind the head, armpits, and legs. And so it kind of gives people then free reign to then play with their ideas and their body types and their personalities, etc. And goes back to these concepts repeatedly. So if we were doing a kimura, it would be the exact same thing. It'd be like start from the kimura from top control and then work backwards. Like I don't differentiate. I don't think there's a difference necessarily between mount, side control, and north-south. I don't separate them in my head. I don't have mount. I don't teach mount. I don't teach side control. I don't teach north-south. The difference between any of them is in side control, you're controlling their armpits with one arm and one leg. In mount, it's with 2 legs, and in north-south, it's 2 arms. So it's still the same idea. I'm still controlling their armpits. But all I've done is just put a different part of my body in their armpit. So the amount of times people are like, how do you go from side control to mount? Well, simple. You just take your knee out or take your arm out and put your knee there. I don't care how you do it. Timing's your own. But that's what you want to accomplish. So figure it out.
Yeah, okay.
And then we go back from there. So you get the kimura, and then you go from these top controls. And then every time you go back a step, they'd offer a bit more resistance or a bit more movement. So you'd have to get those controls, find the wrist, set your kimura up, and then rinse and repeat.
Okay. And so then I think there's a lot of merit in that idea of teaching things backwards, or just, starting with the end product, so that then people have a clear goal of what they're working towards, and it makes sense. And also then as you do work the way back, people get to spend more time completing the steps towards the finished product rather than spending time repeating, a setup that is not what they actually want to achieve. It's just part of
it's one moment in chaos that they might get that setup, and so you're setting them up to fail. They have 2 or 3 different setups in chaos that they can use, but they've got to wait for chaos to align for it to work. And it's like, again, how many times do you catch a submission and then you go, how did I get here?
That's true.
It wasn't a specific setup. You just always like, oh my God, I'm in a triangle. Like, this is amazing. I want to just recreate that idea, as in your body knows what it's like to get a triangle. Or again, it's how many times do you see people set up a triangle and then get to the end but have their legs the wrong way around, or forget how a triangle ends? And you think, right, there's a disconnect there. There's a problem. You've got people who can set up triangles, who can finish triangles of never doing a setup, and you've got people who can do perfect setups but don't have any idea to finish a triangle. Well, I'd rather it be the first kind, as in you just know what a triangle feels like, and you can warp chaos to get there.
Yeah, okay. And then, focusing in then on the idea of that warping chaos or controlling chaos, do you ever, present people an idea of, like, oh, this is something I prepared earlier, like something that you've come up with, or, like a Danaher technique or a Marcelo Garcia technique, and say, hey, try this? Or is it all just letting the people tailor it to their own personalities? And how does the interplay work between those two?
So I may show techniques that or demonstrations of the concept, but I wouldn't teach it as like, you gotta drill this technique. I'd show the concept, I'd teach the concept, then show the technique of like, or a variation that someone's come across of the concept in action. Mm-hmm. But then go back to teaching the concept in general. Again, we don't drill. I've always said I don't want to, the idea of doing it for an arbitrary amount of time, like, you have to do 10 in 2 minutes, or you have to stop after 15 reps, or 5 minutes of doing this technique, or some madness like that. Like, I'd rather you did it once, but spent that entire however long just doing that technique, like looking at the end of it, like looking at every single facet of it, talking about it, saying, right, what if you move this way? Could you get out? No. Okay, what if you go this way? Could you get out? No. Well, would this improve this grip, or would this not improve this grip? I want that kind of feedback. And then, again, going back a level and try and get the resistance working, and saying, right, well, if you turned up onto your side to defend this, could I still get this? No. Okay, so I'm going to have to figure out how to stop you from turning onto your side first. I'd rather that be the way of drilling, instead of, here's the setup, here's the end product, do that 10 times and then come back to me. I'll show them, like I said, the end product of what some people have figured out before, just to show the concept in action. Mm-hmm. I don't want that to be what they drill. But again, that also, again, like, one of my favorite ones is when I teach the like a guard passing session, like in privates, etc. I haven't actually put off in a seminar yet, but I'm working on it. As I say to people, right, this is the concept of guard passing. Now type BJJ guard pass into YouTube, and I can guarantee anything you find is going to have my concept in action. Yeah, you could spend forever watching all these YouTube videos, or just understand the concept. And then they can go away with those tools and then watch all these videos, in their own time, Danaher videos, Marcelo videos, and go, right, well, no, here's the concept working then. It's almost like renders them obsolete. Like,
yeah, okay.
They didn't have videos.
Yeah, and then, so yeah, it's really just for you, the main focus is always going to be on those concepts, and the techniques are just a way to see the concepts in action.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And one thing I want to focus in on there is then your idea of your students giving that constant feedback to each other, because that's something that is not as common, I would say, because it's, mainly should be the instructor giving the feedback. But if students can give each other good feedback, then obviously that's going to be a big benefit to everyone. So how do you actually go about fostering that within your club?
So if I was to show one of these ideas, I'd show like all the parameters of what wouldn't necessarily be in action, as in, I'd say to people, right, if you're going to do like a guard holding or something, like putting a guard into action, I'd want the person in guard to try and posture, try and stack, hand fight, etc., and say, right, could I get rid of your grip if I do this? So I'd set all these different parameters. I'd say, I want you to do this, I want you to do this, I want you to do this. And if, again, because it's something I'm just trying to get away from the idea of, if people are doing just drills, you just have, the one person's dead practically for those 10 reps. So, right, you just go do 10 triangles to me. Someone say they switch off for those 10 reps. And then they say, right, now it's my turn. I want them to be conscious. I want them to be giving feedback, not just for their partner's sake, but for their own sake. As in, I want them to have it done to them, and for them to go, right, actually, could you, I want them to, not almost go like, how to make, not in the same sense of I want them to just only make their partner better. I want them to like almost have their partner do to them what they do to someone. So, like if I was saying like, we're doing an Americana or something, I'd say to someone, right, I want you to be conscious of what's happening during the Americana. I want you to actually say to your partner, well, what if you bring my arm this way? And if it hurts more, so, oh, right, okay, right, I'll have to do that next time for myself, instead of, just switching off of those 10 reps. So it's not just for the person doing the technique's sake, it's for the other person's sake. That's why I say this idea of, I don't want 10 reps. I want it to be a constant conversation throughout that 5 minutes or whatever of, what if you move my arm here? Well, what if you move my arm here? Does that hurt more? Not for that other person's sake, but for your own sake, as in, right, well, actually my arm hurts way more if it's put here. Right, okay. Because you know your own body, and then you just have to replicate that on someone else.
Yeah, that makes sense. The idea of being, I guess, present and mindful while you're going through those or not repetitions, but while you're actually working on the concepts and techniques, rather than, I've certainly been in the situation where I myself have switched off while someone's repping out a technique on me, and you kind of just, I guess, wait for your turn, really.
Exactly, but it's kind of then switching the role up a little bit, as in, it's almost reversing the entire process, in the sense of, the person doing the technique isn't the person learning, it's you. As in, you can it's a frustration of my own over the years of, I don't know what I'm causing to other people because I'm not them. As in, as much pressure as I can put through someone, I don't know what that pressure feels like unless it's done to me. And so whenever I go anywhere and I teach something, I don't ask anyone I don't want to watch two people do it in front of me. I want the person who's having the issue to do it to me. And I then feel everything that should be happening. Almost at that point, I'm learning more than they are, because I can go, right, no, actually, what would I want out of here? No, I'd actually want, my arm hurts a bit more if you move it this way. So could you move my arm over here? Yeah, that really, really hurts now. And so I'm learning just as much as they are, because I'm actually having it done to me for probably the first time. And so I can then take what I've just learned from them twisting me up and then use it in my own jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the way of knowing how much pressure you're putting on someone, because that's something I've thought about myself, just as a way to how I can actually explain that accurately to anyone. And, I'm thinking, should I bring in like a scale one day and a medicine ball, and we get, we give people, they can see on the numbers where it goes up when they take their knees off the mat or something like that, because it is a hard thing to actually get across that, like slowly lifting the knees up or elbows off the mat, and that will actually increase pressure. But like, I know it when I do it to people, because maybe I can see a change of reaction in their face or their breathing pattern. And I've had it done to me as well. So, but to actually make that happen quicker for people to pick that up is a very interesting challenge that I think you're trying to take on there. So when you're doing those things then, and the feedback's going on, we talked about personalities. How much does, people's personality make that work, or perhaps even not work with some people? Because I could see with your training partner becomes such a crucial part of the feedback process instead of the instructor who's spent a lot of time doing this. You know, your training partner might not have as much time giving that feedback. So how do you coach that side of things, and how do you cater to those different personalities?
So I think it then becomes like more of a culture thing, as in when that kind of understanding of, your feedback isn't just for their benefit, it's for your own. As in, you could be directing someone to finish a technique more correctly, but at the same time, you are almost like, you are the full loop. As in, if you can direct someone to do a technique that again, like you said, like, people might tap just out of, I'm tired of this situation, tap. When you're drilling something, as in you drill a triangle, and they just tap because their head's in a triangle.
Mm.
But I'd rather it be a case of, I'd rather have someone put me in a triangle, and then, if I was a student, and then direct them to hurt me more. And so just that culture change there, as in, it's no longer a case of drilling just for the sake of drilling so you can get better, then I have my go and I get better. It's a conversation, as in, we're all investigating these techniques. And then when the outcome isn't reached between these two people to a full standard, and that's when I can get involved. And I'm obviously walking around at this point, and I'm getting my head stuck in triangles, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of weird that I don't get to drill, but I get put. If I demonstrate a technique, I'm not the one doing the technique. If a pair call me over and they say, right, could you show us that triangle again, please? I'm like, okay, you do it to me. And I'd make them go through everything of twisting me up and choking me, because I want them to then, I'd give them constant feedback throughout. I want that kind of culture of it. It's a conversation here. There's the more feedback you give, the better you'll be, instead of the idea of, I need to get my 10 reps in, just hurry up and do yours, please.
Yeah.
As almost, I want to be the person on the bottom, because I learn more. I want that to be the culture, instead of, no, you've had your minute and a half, it's now my time for my minute and a half. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, okay. And so what are then, like, it is a big change in culture from what a lot of people would normally be expecting. What was a big challenge that you've had to overcome while kind of working your way out with that?
How do you mean?
Is there anything that you tried to implement to get people to do that failed and you had to scrap or improve upon? Or has it all just been kind of a bit of a linear progression?
I think it's been more of a linear progression, but I think one of the big things to help is, again, these ideas like that way of drilling and where I've taken with it, again, is directly from Preet. And, we were erring in these directions, but hadn't got there yet. And it wasn't until, again, I met Preet at one of the Globetrotter camps back in 2017. And it was his first camp at a Globetrotter camp in Copenhagen. And I was already, as the purple belt, I was competing at black belt at the time in some of the UK competitions and doing pretty okay. I saw this Estonian black belt, and I thought, I probably couldn't even find Estonia on the map. Who's ever heard of Estonia? I thought I'd give this guy a bit of a run around when I got to the camp. But instead, he twisted me up and spat me out. And so I thought, right, I'm going to have to pay attention to what this guy's class is. And again, his way of teaching was so markedly different. And so I said, look, how much would it cost me to get you to the UK? And so he came over and did one of his intensive weekends. And he was massive into this idea of, one thing he does in his seminars is he'll have you do the techniques quietly, like giving no feedback. And then he'd stop you and say, right, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, talk about the technique. Just don't drill, just talk. Like, give feedback on that technique and say what worked well, what didn't go well. And then once you've done that, do it again with that new feedback. I thought, what a completely different way of doing jiu-jitsu.
Very different.
Once you've had this conversation, then have a conversation in the class. And it was one thing I actually picked up as I started to look at it even more, this idea of this more of a conversation aspect of doing jiu-jitsu. I did a tour of the US just prior to lockdown. I was in North Carolina with Johnny Buck, and I ended up at one of his open mat sessions early one morning. And the whole open mat was just people sitting against the wall asking questions of like the last week, like, oh, I did this in a roll. What could I do here? And various people would pop up with their answers. And I thought, that's brilliant. I love this idea of it's not you all sitting down quietly listening to me. It's, right, why does this work? Why didn't this work? What pros and cons have we found from doing it this way? Can we get it better now? Can we work together and figure this out? Because again, it was kind of a unique way I came through. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, so I never assumed that I was better than anyone, and that's why this came in at such the right time for me. This again, you know, it's one thing. I went to Bradley's for like 1 or 2 sessions, and it was, you know, you can't train there unless you got the gi on, and the great Baja kind of, you know, you can't go anywhere else apart from Baja gyms kind of mentality. But I didn't. I you know, if any of my students say I'm going to go train here tonight, or I'm going to go train here tonight, it's like, cool, please, can you just show us what you picked up when you come back? We only get better if we're a team. I don't know everything, unfortunately. I just got here first. And so, yeah, I was always very pro other people traveling or pro people coming into the gym, because I was like, right, cool, what do you know? Can you show us anything? Or if people traveled, like, cool, bring us back something cool. And so that kind of then just carried out an idea of, again, since I started jiu-jitsu, it's never been a case of I'm the black belt, this is the techniques. I was a white belt teaching a class. I was a blue belt teaching a class. Let's all get together and figure this out together, because it's the only way we're going to figure it out otherwise. And so I don't think we've ever changed.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. That's something else I've talked to a couple of other people, and yeah, that they've been put in these isolated situations where they've had to teach, you know, at that blue, purple belt level. And I'm sure there's plenty of other people in those situations who have maybe just done what they've seen other people do, but it's also seemed to have caused a bit of innovation in at least a few of the people I've seen. And it's very interesting. What's Johnny Buck like? He seems like a bit of a character. Is he?
He is hilarious. He is. His gym is. It seems rough as hell. Like it doesn't make sense. But they are the nicest. One of the nicest gyms I've ever been to. Like Johnny, every higher ranked belt, every student was just the nicest person, and like the crack and the banter amongst them all was amazing. And on his again, it's just these. He put me as a member of his like online group like about a month or 2 before I went over, and every time a new person started, they got a welcome off everyone. They got invited into the group, and everyone said hello to them, like, you know, welcome to such and such, and everyone wished them hello. Or they've got a big board on the back of their wall where it's like got some whiteboard pens or whatever, and you write down, like, it's a gratitude board or like a accomplishment board, and so you write down like something cool you've done or thank someone for something they've done recently. Like, it doesn't, you know, I lost 2 pounds this week, or I've run 3 miles. It doesn't have to be jiu-jitsu based. It's just something cool you did. And that sense of community in a gym was just like, again, Johnny comes across as like such a like I say, a wild character.
He does.
But for him to foster that kind of culture in his gym, I was like, this is the nicest place I've been to. I said, I've been to Baja gyms where if you deviate at all from the technique that's been shown, it's like you're doing push-ups. But in Johnny's gym, it was like, this is the nicest place in the world. Like, you know, let's all give each other thanks and gratitude for something we've done. And he's probably going to hate me if he ever listens to this and hears like that kind of like me saying Johnny Buck is the nicest man in the world. Like, as much as the hard ass as he comes across, he's so cool. He may never let me come back.
You might see the other side after that.
Yeah, exactly. I might say Johnny Buck.
No, that sounds interesting, but it's not that surprising, to be honest. I mean, it's especially in this sport. It's not the most uncommon thing to see people who can have an exterior of the roughest looking people you've ever seen, and then they turn out to be some of the nicest people you've ever met. It's one of the good things about this sport, I guess.
Completely. That
you do run into a lot of good people. And so I'm wondering, just to maybe wrap things up, Chris, sure. if we have a look over your like learning experience, what's the one thing that you wish that you could go back to yourself when you started learning, that you could tell yourself that would help improve the speed at which you were learning even more?
if I knew the concepts that I knew now, if I was told these, if I was just given the control concept of knees and elbows, which is pretty much was the how to defend everything video. If I knew that when I was at the beginning, I could have saved myself so much time. The hours I spent reading books and watching YouTube and all this kind of jazz, it was like, could have easily just saved myself so much heartache. Again, Preet says it very well when he teaches this, infinitely better than I ever could. He says jiu-jitsu is suffering, as in you have so much at the beginning that you don't know what is happening to you. It's horrible. It's a horrible experience. And that's why the first thing I ever teach is, if you keep your elbows glued to your armpits, keep your knees glued to your armpits, you'll be fine. And anytime you feel lost, just do that. I don't care if you ball up or anything like that, at least you're not getting submitted. But if you can just connect your knees to your armpits, you'll be fine.
I like
and
it.
Anytime anything ever goes wrong, like there's the amount of 2-month white belts that I've had come through. I've competed on Grapple Fest on the same card as like Craig Jones and Lachlan Giles. Yet I've had white belts who've been in for like 2 months who I can't choke or submit because they just ball up. They just connect their knees to their armpits and they're fine. But they're looking at that from their perspective. They've got the class black belt wailing on them, and they're surviving. Nothing bad's happening to them. Only things bad happen to them is when they reach out. And again, it's something we were all told on day one. Keep your elbows close. But I just never was told how close. If I'd known keep them so close they're connected to your damn knees and hips, I think jiu-jitsu would have been a lot easier for me.
Yeah, it is funny, those little things that maybe you do get mentioned in passing, or even like that the Ryan Hall comment that gets mentioned in passing that had that impact on you. And
it was in passing. There was no emphasis on it. I spent so much longer playing the deep R stuff he showed than anything to do with the knees and the elbow thing. I was like, if I'd known that would have been infinitely more useful.
Yeah.
Again, it was one of the other things. Again, it was a Braulio's first black belt, Chu Kwong Man from Birmingham. In Birmingham, he teaches renegade jiu-jitsu. So he's got Tom Brees and a couple of like really really high level guys in his team. I did a couple of seminars with him again about 5 years ago, and he said that everyone talks about the space between the knees and armpits. Again, they weren't, but okay. And he said no one ever talks about the space between the ass and heel. And he said if you can keep that one closed, there's no other guards that will work on you. Again, like Delhi Heaver, half guard, butterfly, none of those work if they can't get in between your ass and heel. I was like, what? I can fix guard that easily. And so again, it goes back to how to defend everything. If I'd just known those two things early on, I could have figured out jiu-jitsu a whole lot faster. And the emphasis was put on those two things.
I think, the emphasis and just knowing where to put those emphasis is such it's an interesting area because it seems to still be evolving in a way to shed light on some actual constants, which is a kind of strange.
I think the emphasis in jiu-jitsu is wrong. I said there's a guard passing video by Renzo Gracie, a close guard pass video, where he talks ages about where to grip on the gi, and people spend so long on those stupid details. Do you put your finger in the middle of the gi? Do you twist it left? Do you twist it right? Is your elbow flared? Is it crunched in? Is it pushed into the stomach? Are you postured on your whatever? And it's like, that isn't the important part. So he does this, talks about various aspects of that for this guard passing video. But again, all he does is he connects his knees to his elbows and then climbs in the space between their knees and elbows. But at no point really does he talk about that being the crucial aspect of this guard pass. It's like, that was a passing detail, that the guard pass doesn't work if they're not in this space.
Yeah, it's fascinating that we can focus so much time on a technique like that, and then I guess that's why some jiu-jitsu moves will go in trends, right? Where they can kind of come in and out of trends, but there is the constant between it all would be, I guess, those concepts that follow those things, those techniques along.
Exactly. Like, there's always a new guard that comes out in some way. But again, they're all always iterations of the same damn concept. Like, I'm sure, you think rubber guard. Rubber guard, again, is just an expression of that guard concept. How can I control your armpits and the back of your head with the 4 weapons that I have? Yet, all of a sudden, everyone goes nuts about, or 10 years ago, everyone goes nuts about rubber guard. And it's like, well, no, it's the same thing again. Or lapel guard, or wind guard, or whatever mad guard that Keenan's come out with recently. Whoever knows what that is. But it's always the same damn thing. You can't really play guard without this concept. But why is no one talking about this is what's happening?
It's a very good point. And I guess that's why we've talked about it. That's why we've talked about it here and put some emphasis on it. I really have appreciated this conversation, Chris. I've really enjoyed it.
I've loved this. Thank you so much.
Yeah. No,
we're going to have another chat in the future.
For sure. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way that they can go about and do it?
If they just type Chris Pains, Pain, so Pain, ES, into Google, Chris Pains BJJ, they'll find my Facebook, they'll find my YouTube, they'll find my personal website. Any of those aspects, if people want to contact me via those, I reply relatively fast, and I'll happily talk to anyone. I'll happily, if the amount of people who contact me and they'll say, like, ask me questions and stuff, if I've got access to a video camera, I'll record and answer. I'm very, very accessible if anyone ever wants to talk to me.
Beautiful.
I'm just happy to talk to me.
Hey, it's yeah. Who isn't really?
Yeah.
In this day and age, especially.
It's such a weird idea because I'd never done BJJ. I'm not from a lineage. I have no lineage. I obviously got my black belt from Preet. But as far as learning goes, there isn't anyone above me. There is the lineage thing kind of falls apart. So that idea that when in a style that puts so much emphasis on if it's from Brazil or who got their black belt from who, which I've been asked that question numerous times and it drives me insane. Just a simple idea that some no-name guy from Stafford, people want to find out something from him. Like, I'll happily answer any question just because of that.
Yeah, well, it's something that I'm running into a lot with people I'm talking to because, there's obviously that tremendous value in tradition that
yes.
I probably don't need to explain because it's pretty evident that seems to be the dominant force, right? That value of tradition. Yes. But then it's the people that are kind of going outside of that can bring in some new creative ideas where I think a lot of value can actually be had. So, well, it's the mat should be, the mat is the truth, as Sakuraba has said.
Exactly. Like, everyone is equal on that mat.
That's very, very interesting stuff. Well, Chris, thank you so much. And let's do this again in the future.
No, it's perfect. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it.
You have been listening to the Sonny Brown Breakdown. Until next time, you can visit sonnybrown.net to find out more ways to break it down.